Could these UFOs be aliens? Now I'm going into a territory of you as a human being wondering about all the alien civilizations that are out there. The humbling question.
We are not alone.
You think we're not alone?
It's an improbability that we are alone. If by virtue of the fact that sentient human life exists, intelligent human life exists, all of the probabilities that would have to be destroyed for that to be true simply speak over the galaxies that exist, that there's no possible way we're alone. It's a mathematical equation. It's a 1 or a 0, right? And for me, it has to exist. It's impossible otherwise, rationally, for me to think that we are truly the only intelligent life form in all of the universe. But to think that an alien life form is anything like us at all is equally as inconceivable. To think that they're carbon-based, bipedal, humanoid alien species that just happen to fly around in metal machines and visit alien planets in a way that they become observed is it's just silly. It's the world of sci-fi.
Well, let me push. Yeah.
Every good scientist, because we always assume that they're superior to us in intelligence.
Yes.
When any scientist carries out an experiment, the whole objective of the experiment is to observe without being disclosed or being discovered.
Yes.
So why on earth would we think that this superior species makes the mistake of being discovered over and over again?
So to push back on that idea, if we were to think about us humans trying to communicate with ants, first we observe for a while. There'll be a bunch of PhDs written, a bunch of people just sort of collecting data, taking notes, trying to understand about this thing that you detected that seems to be a living thing, which is a very difficult thing to define from an alien perspective, or from our perspective, if we find life on Mars or something like that. Okay, so you observe for a while. But then if you want to actually interact with it, how would you interact with the ants? If I were to interact with the ants, I would try to infiltrate. I would try to figure out what is the language they use to communicate with each other. I would try to operate at their physical scale, in terms of the physics of their interaction, in terms of the information methods, mediums of information exchange with pheromones or whatever, however the heck ants. So I would try to mimic them in some way. So in that sense, it makes sense that the objects we would see, you mentioned bipedal. Yes, of course, it's ridiculous that aliens would actually be very similar to us, but maybe they create forms in order to be like, here, the humans will understand it, and this needs to be sufficiently different from humans to know that there's something weird. I don't know. I think it's actually an incredibly difficult problem of figuring out how to communicate with a thing way dumber than you. People assume if you're smart, it's easy to talk to the dumb thing. But I think it's actually extremely difficult when the gap in intelligence is just orders of magnitude. And so, of course, you can observe, but once you notice the thing is sufficiently interesting, how do you communicate with that thing?
So this is where one of the things I always try to highlight is how conspiracies are born. Because many people don't understand how easy it is to fall into the conspiratorial cycle. So the first step to a conspiracy being born is to have a piece of evidence that is true. And then immediately following the true evidence is a gap in information. And then to fill in the gap of information, people create an idea, and then the next logical outcome is based on the idea that they just created, which is an idea that's based on something that was imagined in the first place. So the factual thing is now 2 steps away, and then 3 steps away, 4 steps away as the things go on. And then all of a sudden you have this kernel of truth that turned into this wild conspiracy. So in our example, you talked about humans trying to communicate with ants. Ants are not intelligent. Ants are not an intelligent species. They're a drone species that's somehow commanded through whatever technology, whatever
Spoken like a typical human, but yes.
Whatever biological thing is in the queen, right? But they're not, it's not a fair equivalent. But let's look at gorillas, or let's look at something in the monkey family, right? Where largely we agree that there is some sort of intelligence there, or dolphins, some sort of intelligence, right? it is a human thing to want to observe and then communicate and integrate. That's a human thing, not an intelligent life thing. So for us to even think that an intelligent alien species would want to engage and communicate at all is an extremely human assumption.
Yeah.
And then from that assumption, then we started going into all the other things you said. If they wanted to communicate, wouldn't they want to mimic? If they wanted to mimic, wouldn't they create devices like ours? So now we're 3 steps removed from the true fact of there's something unexplainable in the skies.
Yeah, so the fact is there's something unexplainable in the skies, and then we're filling in the gaps with all of our basic human biases and assumptions. Yeah.
Exactly.
But the thing is,
now we're getting right back to Project Northwood. We need some plan. I don't care how crazy the idea is, guys. Give me some plan. So that's where we come up with, well, maybe it's an alien species trying to communicate, or maybe it's an alien, a hostile threat that's trying to take over the world, or who knows what. Maybe it's.
I mean, but you have to somehow construct hypotheses and theories for anomalies, and then from that, amidst the giant pile of the ridiculous, emerges perhaps a deeper truth.
Absolutely.
over a period of decades, and at first that truth is ridiculed, and then it's accepted. That whole process.
The Earth revolving around the sun.
Yeah, the Earth revolving around the sun. But to me, it's interesting because it asks us looking out there with SETI, just looking for alien life, is forcing us to really ask questions about ourselves, about what is life, how special. First of all, what is intelligence? How special is intelligence in the cosmos? And I think it's inspiring and challenging to us as human beings, both on a scientific and engineering level, but also on a philosophical level. I mean, all of those questions are laid before us when you start to think about alien life.